right, everyone, let's get started with our first official lecture for psychology. Remember, we are studying abnormal psych during our 3-week course, and today we're going to look at stress and how stress affects our daily life. And I would venture a guess that probably a lot of us are feeling a little bit stressed right now, so let's learn a little bit more about that. So some vocabulary words that you will learn throughout this lecture: stress, stressor, stress reaction, distress, eustress, and conflict situation. Okay, so what is stress? Stress is how a person reacts to his or her inability to cope with tense situations or events. And these tense situations or events are called stressors. So again, officially a stress-producing event or situation. Keep in mind that stress is subjective, so not every person will perceive a specific event as a stressor. Something that stresses me out might not necessarily stress you out, and vice versa. And then stress reaction is your body's response to a stressor. Again, this is perceptual, so it's how you perceive things. You will have a cognitive reaction, a physical reaction, an emotional reaction, and these can differ based on A, the person, and B, the stressing event. All right, so components of stress. So Hans Selye in 1978 and 1982 studied stress, and he found that not all stress needs to be avoided. We're all going to experience stress in our everyday life, and naturally we want to avoid being overstressed, but not everything that is stress-inducing is meant to be avoided. So distress is stress that stems from acute anxiety or pressure, so this would be negative stress. Eustress is positive stress, and this results from motivating things, striving, and challenging. So you might be studying for an AP class right now, and that could be causing you stress, but this could be positive stress because you're motivated to succeed and get that 4 on your AP or whatever it is that your goal is. And so even though you're feeling under pressure, it's a good kind of pressure because you're moving towards some specific goal. So what are some additional components of stress? Just know that stress is normal. It can be beneficial. So we often think of stress as just being negative all the time, but personally, I work really well under pressure. Am I stressed during that time? Absolutely I am, but I still work well under it, so it's beneficial for me. It is most important for us to learn how to cope with stress. So if you do not learn how to cope with stress, you will just feel overwhelmed, you'll be burned out, and just be generally miserable. But if you learn how to cope and manage stress, you'll be more likely to face unknown situations with a positive outlook. Richard Lazarus in 1993, he created this cognitive model of stress, and basically it explains how your perception and evaluation of an event defines whether or not it is a stressor. So that's kind of what we talked about a couple slides ago. Something that is stressing to you might not be stressing to me, vice versa, and it's how we perceive and evaluate a situation. Conflict situation. So this is one you have to choose between 2 or more options, and it generally results from opposing motives. So this causes you stress because in order to select option A, you have to give up option B, or vice versa. So you give something up, or you are facing some sort of thing that you want to avoid. So if my daughter wants to have dessert, she has to eat her vegetables. If she doesn't eat her vegetables, she doesn't get a dessert. So this is a conflict situation for her. How can she decide what it is that is most valuable to her? So there are different types of conflict situations. The first is approach, and this is the deciding between 2 things that you really want. So do I want to go to Michigan State University, or do I want to go to the University of Michigan? 2 really great schools. How do I decide which one? This can be stress causing. However, the stress is minimal and it's generally easy to resolve because no matter what, you get a decision that works for you. There's avoidance conflict, which is deciding between things that you don't want. So do I want to eat spinach for dinner, or do I want to eat peas? Both things sound awful. Which one do I want less than the other one. This is known as picking the lesser of the two evils. There's approach avoidance for conflict. And this is where you really want to try something, want to do something, but you're also kind of afraid of it. So skydiving, public speaking, things like that. Maybe driving a car, anything that has some sort of draw to it, but at the same time also causes you a little bit of anxiety. And then finally, there is double approach avoidance conflict. And this is when you're faced with two or more alternatives, and both alternatives have both positive and negative aspects to them. And you just have to decide which is the one that you're going to go with. So when you're faced with a conflicting situation, the first thing you want to do is appraise the situation. So there's primary appraisal, which is your immediate gut reaction to this. Do you see the situation as irrelevant? Is it a positive situation? Is it a negative situation? And then you go through secondary appraisal, which is deciding how to deal with this situation that may or may not be causing you stress. So first is gut reaction, and then the second is trying to make a decision. So there are things in our environment that cause us stress. So some of the things that might cause you stress when you're working on schoolwork would be noise. Noise is a significant irritant for many people. I know that if I'm already feeling irritated, noise is just like a huge trigger for me where it drives me bananas. Another environmental stressor is feeling crowded. So if you don't like being in tight spaces, that is amplified. These are things that are generally across the board stressors at some level to most individuals. There's also life changes and stresses. So any life change you go through, no matter what it is, can cause you stress. You can get married, and that could be a stressor. You can move. You can go to college. You can get a divorce. You could lose a loved one. All of these things can cause you stress. And Thomas H. Holmes and Richard H. Rahe in 1967 created the social readjustment rating scale, which is designed to kind of show people how stressing life events can be. This is this is a chart that includes the social readjustment rating scale, so you can see things on there. Death of a spouse is one of the most stressful things that a person can go through. Down at the bottom of the list, number 40, changing in eating habits. Maybe you go from eating Pop-Tarts for breakfast to saying, no, I'm going to eat an apple for breakfast. You're still kind of experiencing stress because it's like this change in your life, but on the scale of stress, minimal stress. So in environmental stress, we have what are known as hassles. These are like common small things that can be stressors. So what are some things that irritate you? I know that sometimes just going around and picking up after people can be a stressor in my life. However, we want to try to minimize these and really put them on the scale of like what is something that I need to focus on and be stressed out about, and what are things that I can kind of let go. So hassles, if you have enough of them, can actually be linked to health problems like heart issues. So it is important to not only focus on the hassles, the stressing events in our life, but uplifting events, positive things that happen. Okay, because if we can balance those two out, like, okay, I'm hassled by picking up after my kids, or like the glass of spilt milk, but I'm uplifted by the fact that they were creating art when the milk got spilled, and so it kind of balances out. So our main idea for the lecture, and I'm going to try to keep all of these lectures short and sweet so that you can get on with your day. I realize that this is an elective, but your main idea is that stress results from our perceptions of demands placed upon us and our evaluations of situations we encounter. So this second part of the lecture, again, I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm going to go over your first major assignment for this class. So what I want you to do is create a stress log. This will be due Friday, May 1st, so this Friday, and we're going to go over this in a little bit of detail here. There is also an assignment sheet in the Google Classroom that you can access at any time. Okay, so part one. You're going to select a day to keep a log of the things that hassle you and your uplifting events. Try to be as specific as possible. I definitely recommend writing things down as you go. However, I guess you could reflect on the day, but you're more likely to miss things if you're reflecting versus writing in the moment. I will provide a template for you that you can use to keep track of your stressing and uplifting moments. Part 2. So there's an analysis and a reflection part. This is short and sweet. It's one paragraph. So you have your log and you have your reflection, and that's what you'll turn in on Friday. Your reflection is going to be something that you would do at the end of that day, whatever day it was that you did your stress log. Analyze your overall mood. Do you feel like you were in a really great mood all day, or were you really unhappy? Were you kind of somewhere in the middle, even keeled? Was it a good day? Was it a bad day? Do you find that your stressors, your hassles were more common than your uplifting moments? These are all things that you can focus on in your reflection, and then try to spend the end of your reflection identifying things that you can do to focus on uplifting or positive events in your life, because this will help you minimize stress and maximize your happiness. Again, this is due Friday, May 1st, and it is worth 15 points. All right, if you have any questions, be sure to attend office hours or shoot me an email at brittany.dambro@lansingschools.net.